Matt. Thanks to the charity for asking me to come and talk to you this morning. Sorry about the delay. The projector has the worst case of narcolepsy I've seen in my life, actually. Listen, daffodil. Can you see this screen okay? It's pretty small. Yeah? Can you hear me? Yeah. Great, okay. Well, I've set a look at a challenge today. I'm going to tell you why we dream. And this is very important to a lot of you because dreams go horribly wrong in narcolepsy, as you'll be aware. So all you want to know about dreams. So I'm going to quote Hamlet. I'm going to be Benedict Cumberbatch of the day. To sleep the chance to dream. Why do we dream and what happens when it goes wrong? So I'm not going to blind you with science, hopefully. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. If any questions come up, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm going to kick off with this very simple graph, and this is simple but valid, okay? At any one time of the day or night, a brain should normally be fully awake or fully asleep, and we divide sleep into two bits, so-called rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep, and non-REM sleep. Now, the normal person will say either be in this, or this, and these are very mutually exclusive states. There's no overlap. You're either awake or you're not awake. There's a little bit of overlap as we go into sleep, but that's usually pretty quick. Now, this goes horribly wrong in narcolepsy, as you know. And we take it for granted that we slip through these states. I mean, these are very different states to be in, wake and sleep. We go into them easily. You go from non-REM to REM sleep, REM to non-REM sleep. Now, REM sleep is a fairly unstable state to be in, even for a person without narcolepsy. So if you wake up in a REM sleep period, you will often have a dream or a nightmare. You know, these are obviously quite common phenomena. So that's what should happen, and that's what doesn't happen in narcolepsy. Now, most of you, or some of you will have this test. I mean, how do you measure sleep? I mean, what's sleep all about? So we define sleep by lots of tests. The important test is the EEG test. So lots of electrodes on this chap's head here, measuring the brain waves that define the sleep stages. Lots of other stuff too, actually. Lots of breathing monitors, chest movement monitors in the chin here and also in the legs. Some fancy ones even have esophageal monitoring to measure acid coming up. But the important ones are these, the brain waves, and we simply define sleep by these brain waves. So in drowsiness here, there's a bit going on in the brain waves. In sleep, there's these things called spindles, and in deep sleep, and this is the good stuff, this is what your brain needs, what's called slow wave sleep, these dramatic waves are seen. That's the deep sleep, deep non-REM sleep. And then your REM sleep is a different ballgame, REM sleep. REM sleep is a bit like being awake in many ways, according to the electrodes. Your brain is very active in REM sleep, very different from the non-REM sleep. So this is what we should get. This is an idealized so-called hypnogram of a young adult with normal sleep. And you're probably aware, as you go through the night, we cycle through these various sleep stages. Normally, from awake, we should hit our first bit of deep, slow wave sleep, about an hour into sleep, and then we go into REM sleep, then deep sleep, then REM sleep, deep sleep, and through the night we cycle 4 or 5 times through this. And just to point out that this stuff, the good stuff, the slow wave sleep happens in the first third of the night usually, or should do, and the REM sleep occurs towards the end of the night. Now, most people have REM sleep. We should have REM sleep as part of normal health. But normally we don't recognise it. We have it in the middle of sleep. And if you wake up in a REM sleep period, like this mythical person does, you will have a dream usually, or a vivid dream. So that's what we would aim for. That's normality. Okay, so I'm going to basically try and define what dreams are. I'm going to tell you a bit more about REM sleep. It's a fascinating state to be in REM sleep. There's some very interesting elements about REM sleep I'll draw your attention to. I'll run through a few theories of dreaming. I mean, we don't know why we dream, we don't know why we have REM sleep, but there's, as you might imagine, quite a few theories out there. I have my own that I'll briefly tell you about for what it's worth. And then we'll go to the abnormal dreaming side of things, the so-called parasomnias, REM sleep parasomnias. And of course, in narcolepsy, this is a very important part of it. So how do you define a dream? Everyone knows what a dream is. It's actually quite difficult to define a dream. It's rather dry statement as in the textbooks. A subjective experience during sleep consisting of complex and organised images showing temporal progression. That doesn't really capture a dream, does it? But it gives the idea that there's usually a story going on. It's usually visual. It's a narrative. But we don't define dreams very well. In the sleep world, this term is now being used a bit, so-called sleep mentation, which is a clumsy word. But it means anything that goes on in your head when you're asleep. It's any sort of thought, hallucination, perception, or dream. But people still use the word dream a lot. And of course, there's a big link to REM sleep. So if someone's in a sleep laboratory and they're in REM sleep, and you wake them up, give them a shove, there's a very good chance they'll have a very vivid dream, or be in the middle of a very vivid dream. Usually a visual dream, often delusional. You think you have powers with a kind of narrative complexity, often very bizarre, obviously. But just to make the point too, if you wake someone up from deep sleep, from deep non-REM sleep, often they will have some sort of perception, a spider in the room or some sort of maybe frightening vision, but not really a dream, not a kind of story going on. So stories and dreams are really the province of REM sleep. So you might be surprised to know there's actually a science of dreaming. It's got a fancy word, oneurology, and there are a few oneurologists out there. It'd be great to have a passport, wouldn't it? I'm a card-carrying oneurologist. And what must the science of dreaming explain? Well, lots of bizarre things about dreams. It has to explain it. It doesn't, to be honest. But what sort of things might it address? It has to address why we're in a different world in dream sleep, why there's an altered conscious state. We're kind of isolated from the real world in dreams, aren't we? And there's a delusional element to it. It has to explain why dreams are largely emotional. And if you look at it scientifically, if you wake someone up from dream sleep, they're usually negative emotions. Not always, but usually negative emotions. We have to explain why memories are mixed in the dream. There's often very old memories and more recent daytime memories, lots of bizarre imagery, weird plots and weird motor skills flying around the room, for example. We have to explain that. We also have to explain this, why most people, and this doesn't actually apply so much to people with narcolepsy, but a person has a dream, a very good dream, wakes them up, they're very scared by it, but the memory trace for that goes really quickly usually, within an hour or two, whereas people with narcolepsy often have very persistent memories of their dreams. We also have to address the question of what happens if you suppress dream sleep. There's some problems with your brains and brain damage that can do this, and drugs can certainly do it. So if you suppress dreams, does it have any effect on people? I like this question. Do dreams occur in real time? So are these things going on actually in real time, or is it just like a memory? And that's quite interesting. I'll come back to that a bit. And the big one, what are dreams all about? Why do we have dreams? A lot of the brain is devoted to this bizarre state, REM sleep. Why the hell do we do it? I don't know, to be honest, really. But that's a question I'll attempt to address. Okay, so ignore this slide. It's just there to show you we know a lot about REM sleep, a lot about dreaming. And basically, if you put someone in a brain scanner, and there are now these fancy brain scanners that don't show the brain structure, a normal scan, they show the brain functions, in which the brain is lighting up during a certain state or a certain function. And bizarrely, they can get people to sleep and even dream in these scanners. And if you do that, the part of the brain that lights up is very active metabolically. It's a part of the brain called the limbic lobe. It's the emotional part of the brain, which you know sensory. So we know which bits of the brain light up, and we know which bits of the brains are switched off in REM sleep, the frontal lobes in particular. This is the part of the brain that controls personality, controls awareness, rational thinking, abstract thinking. So that's not working. Neither is the bit that recognises faces, interestingly. So the bit that recognises faces is higher spatial awareness is switched off, but the limbic lobe lights up like a Belisha beacon in REM sleep. At the other end of the body, this is quite important too, there are bits of the brain here in what's called the brainstem that descend down to our muscles in REM sleep. And this bit of the brain turns on and actively switches off all our muscles in REM sleep. We are actively paralysed in REM sleep, or should be. And this is an active thing, so these muscles are completely floppy and weak. And you know if you hit someone's tendon reflex, you get a nice tendon jerk. If you did that to someone in REM sleep, you get nothing, zip. There's an active inhibition of all your muscles, apart from the eyes, obviously, and the diaphragm to keep you breathing. So this is quite important, this active inhibition of muscles. And you might say, well, what's that all about? Why is that important? Well, one theory is this is to do with our ancestry. When we used to live in trees as primates, if you're having a big dream in a tree, you acted it out, you fall out the tree, you die. So we've evolved, maybe, to have this complete stillness in REM sleep. Cats and dogs in particular, don't have it, I'm sure you'll be aware. Dogs love acting out their dreams. But primates and humans should be completely still in their REM sleep. And this will be interesting of some of you too. This mechanism, this paralysis, is what cataplexy is all about. So REM sleep paralysis is cataplexy. Okay, so a few facts about REM sleep. Now, I debated whether to show this, it's a rather distasteful slide, but in the 90s and before, they used to sleep-deprive rats to death, can you believe? A horrible thing to do. I'm not quite sure what it's told us, other than that sleep's really important. But if you have this rather draconian Dickensian torture chamber, so this rat's being monitored for sleep, brainwaves, and when it goes to sleep, this thing rotates, so this rat's kept awake. This rat also gets rotated, but not contingent on its sleep, so it gets some sleep. And this poor rat will die in about 2 to 4 weeks. And if you just do it for REM sleep, so just when it goes into REM sleep and do this, you will still kill the rat. So this rat needs REM sleep. Horrible thing to do to a rat, but it's out there in the literature. Can you believe the Italians on Name and Shame in 1894 steppe-deprived puppies to death? It takes 5 days for a puppy to die, can you believe? Anyway, enough of that horrible stuff. This is interesting. This is a rather bizarre graph. It's called a log graph, so from birth to the year 100. And this shows how much REM sleep we should be getting. And hard to believe, but people can actually measure REM sleep in utero, in a fetus. It's called active sleep. It's a form of REM sleep. And in utero, the developing baby is virtually all in REM sleep. Certainly at birth here, you spend a third of your life in REM sleep. Astonishing. It gets less as you get older, but even in senescence, old age, you're still having a good hour and a half of REM sleep. You should do most nights. But the point is that REM sleep is very much a developmental thing. Babies and infants really have loads of REM sleep. During REM sleep too, things happen to our so-called autonomic nervous system. This is the bit that controls blood pressure, heart rate, temperature regulation, and this becomes very unstable in REM sleep. So there are massive surges of blood pressure, your heart rate goes all over the shop, and we become cold-blooded in REM sleep. So that's probably why you have vivid dreams when you're in a cold environment or a hot environment, because you wake up, because you can't keep your temperature stable in REM sleep, so it wakes you up. And there's one theory too that people that die in their sleep with heart arrhythmias, it's all happening in REM sleep because your heart rate's going over the shop. Every animal that's been studied, virtually anyway, has a form of REM sleep. Even bees, can you believe. Now, insects have active and restful states. But in the restful state, when a bee's antennae droop, that's thought to be the equivalent of bee dreaming. Obviously, we don't know they're having dreams, but that is thought to be the equivalent of bee REM sleep. If you look at other animals, you can pick up brain waves deep in the brain that seem to correlate with dreaming. Lots of visual things going on deep in the brain. You can't ask them, obviously, but that's thought to be the case. This is an interesting fact too, that animals in the wild have much less sleep than they do when they're domesticated or in zoos. So even our poor old sloth, the sloth gets a bad name, but the sloth in the wild actually isn't that slothful, it's pretty active. And particularly REM sleep. So in the wild, animals have very little REM sleep, but when they're domesticated, they have loads of REM sleep, and dogs in particular, they go straight into REM sleep, as you may have witnessed. We'll come back to that. This is also an interesting fact about REM sleep, it's linked with depression. So people that have significant depression have this slightly odd REM sleep. They go into REM really quickly. I showed you in that slide earlier on that people shouldn't go into REM before about an hour and a bit. If you're depressed, you go into REM much more quickly. And if you treat depression either with drugs or with counselling, talking therapies, that normalises your REM sleep parameters, which is quite interesting. So, some of you will be aware, as I'm sure, that virtually every antidepressant drug out there suppresses REM sleep. These drugs create a chemical balance in the brain that makes you less likely to go into REM sleep. So if you want to suppress REM sleep, you can quite often give people an antidepressant, even though they're not depressed, but it creates a chemical environment that makes you less likely to go into REM sleep. Other drugs will also do it. Alcohol is quite a good REM sleep suppressor, as are the so-called benzodiazepines, Valium drugs, will also suppress REM sleep. The DTs, you know the DTs? Now the DTs during tremens, when someone goes on a bender for, say, 2 weeks and then stops drinking, they have the DT, the pig elephants, what have you. And the DTs are probably dreams that are escaping into wakefulness, because if you suppress dream sleep, REM sleep, for 2 weeks, this big build-up occurs, this massive pressure to have dreams, and they leak out as DTs probably when you've had an alcoholic bender. So, a bit of history now. So let's go into why do we do this bizarre thing, dream, have REM sleep. And since time immemorial, people have wondered about dreams, clearly. The Greeks were heavily into it, actually. Even before them, there was clay papyrus records of mention of dreams going back to thousands of years ago. And perhaps not surprisingly, back in that day, they were thought to be divine phenomena, divine interventions or divine prophecies. This chap here from ancient Greek, 30,000 dreams were described in detail and what they actually meant. Mythology, the Greeks had a massive mythology linked to sleep, and the god of night, Nyx, and the god of darkness, Erebus, had twins, and the twins were the god of sleep, Hypnos, and Thanatos, his brother, the god of death. And here's them depicted in the picture, it's a bit blurry. They also had all these other god dreams, various sorts of dreams, and strange dreams, phantasmos. So the Greeks were heavily into dreams. Now Aristotle, obviously a famous ancient Greek, is credited for really getting dreams slightly away from this divine sort of mythological sort of perspective. He has some pretty funny ideas. He thought that dreams were created by turbulence in the blood that went through the heart, which sounds really bizarre these days. But bear in mind, back in ancient Greece, they thought the brain was a pump, so maybe not that so bizarre. But he is credited with this. He was the first to point out that sleep and wake are opposite states, so they're mutually exclusive. So when you're awake, you suppress sleep, and when you're asleep, you should suppress wake. And that's really quite a modern thought, actually. So fair credit to Aristotle for coming up with that notion. We're going to whiz through history now. So Christianity, we return really to this divine interpretation of dreams. You've probably heard of Joseph's dream, Jacob's ladder here. So this was much more returned to the Greek idea that you have a divine inspiration from your dream. Then we go through to the Middle Ages, where dreams become more evil phenomena. So the work of the devil, you're possessed by dreams. You don't talk about these much later. Coming to the 16th century, 17th century, it was realised that emotions or mood problems or mood issues could influence dreams, and body humours were all the rage in those days. And then we fast forward to Freud at the end of the 19th century, and here we have psychoanalysis starting off. The ideas of wish fulfillment, and this famous phrase that dreams are our royal road to the unconsciousness. And it's debatable how much Freud's added to the science of dreams, although quite a few people still kind of follow his ideas and are kind of neo-Freudian. But really, in 1952 is when things started to kick off scientifically, when the chap called Aserinsky discovered REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is really what dreams are all about. So that's a whisk through history and ancient history. But what are they all about? Why did we dream? And even now, there are two main strands of theories. Is it the dream itself, or the content of the dream, a so-called psychoanalysis sort of point of view, or is it what's going on behind the dream, the actual process, the biological process behind the dream? And are the dreams just really a side issue? They're just kind of noise in the background. They don't mean a thing, the actual dream itself. It's just what's going on to create the dream that's important. And this is still a really hot ongoing debate, actually. I don't want to go into this by any sort of detail, but this is quite an interesting new theory of dream sleep, coming from a chap called Matthew Walker, who used to be up in Newcastle, but is now running a big sleep lab in California. And his simple idea is that dream sleep is very important for emotional memory. Sleep in general is important for memory. We now think that sleep is very important for consolidating memory. So you have a memory that's in a kind of transient state during the day, it's in temporary storage. When you go into good sleep, it goes into long-term storage. It's quite a common theme now in sleep theories. But in dream sleep, we think that emotional memories are particularly important and are consolidated. So dream sleep makes you remember emotional memories more clearly. But more important than that, dream sleep or REM sleep also strips out the affective tones, it's called, i.e. the emotional part of memory. So the idea is if you're a caveman and you've had a tussle with a saber-toothed tiger, you want to remember that tussle for the next time, you want to remember what you did and how you escaped, but you don't really want to remember the fear that go along with the saber-toothed tiger. So the idea is simply that REM sleep helps you to remember the events but strips out the emotion. And of course this fails in post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, where people have very frightening dreams and occasionally hallucinations of the event that triggered off their big trauma. So that's one interesting theory of REM sleep. This is also a recurring theme in dream sleep, that dreams are there to remove the junk from the day's experiences. And it's actually been around for a long time. This chap in the 1800s came up with this. Dreams erase unformed ideas, sensory impressions, not fully worked out during the previous day. And this was known by Freud. So that's really early on that they came up with this theory. This guy's a very famous chap in neurology. He kind of invented epilepsy, really. He also said that dream sleep serves to sweep away unnecessary memories and connections from the day. So it's a very early idea that's now coming back into fashion. There's a chap, you probably recognise his name, Francis Crick. He famously inventing DNA, or the structure of DNA, but he also dabbled in neuroscience and had a theory of sleep and dream sleep. I won't labour his precise theory, but essentially he thought that that when the brain is disconnected from the outside world and it's like an isolated state, dreams send up, or REM sleep sends up all these random messages how to cleanse the memory and get rid of all the rubbish connections that occur during the day. People debate his actual theory, but the actual underlying idea may well be true. What about the psychology of dreams? This woman here is kind of one of these neo-Freudians, and she says dreams allow an individual to deal with waking problems, promoting psychological well-being and new insights. So kind of like an auto-psychotherapy, so dreams actually have to deal with your emotional baggage. And this goes back to Jung, this sort of idea. So some people do think that dreams help problem solve or help you adjust your emotions. And there's quite a few famous examples of scientists from days of yore have had great inspirations during their dreams. This guy dreamt the structure of a chemical called benzene. He got a snake that came around and hit itself, and bingo, eureka. I think this guy was the periodic table guy. So these chaps always had these inspirational dreams, and they solved their problems during dream sleep, so it's said. But is that really true? Is there any evidence for that? Well, actually, it's very hard to gather evidence for this, as you might imagine. Well, having said that, this chap Matthew Walker, actually, I mentioned previously, showed that if you wake someone up from dream sleep, from REM sleep, they're very good at doing anagrams, as their brain's in this kind of fluid, lateral state. And some people have done experiments to show that your mathematical reasoning is also better when you're waking up from REM sleep. So there may be sort of grain of truth in this. The other side of it, the emotional adjustment side, I love this quote, I'm always using it. I've no idea who this chap was, but the best bridge for repair between despair and hope is a good night's sleep. So the idea, if you go to bed in low mood, a good night's sleep has a good chance of making you feel better, and if you don't get a good night's sleep, you'll feel worse. So this idea that depression or bad mood fuels bad sleep, but also bad sleep fuels bad mood, I think it's really out there as a current concept. And dreams certainly reflect emotional status. I mean, there's a big input of emotion into dreams, but do they actually help with it? Do dreams actually help to reduce your low mood or depression? That's still kind of up for grabs, really. I'd like to finish dream theory with this chap here. Now, I hadn't heard of this guy. I had my own little theory about dream sleep, and then I read this chap's stuff. I thought, this guy resonates with my thoughts. He's a philosopher, can you believe, from Finland, the University of Turku in Finland. And he has this idea about evolutionary development of REM sleep. So dreams generally reflect an organised selective simulation of threatening events consistent with the environment of human ancestors. So he's going back to caveman existence when we evolved, when we evolved to have REM sleep. And essentially he says that we rehearse threats in our dream sleep. So we rehearse that saber-toothed tiger coming to attack us. So the dreams aren't totally random, they're not random noise, as a lot of people think, but they're kind of partly organised. And by having this threat simulation, we actually get better at the threat when it comes into real life. So it's a rehearsal, if you like. And in dreams, it's quite interesting. We are usually victims, and people have lots of dreams. It's quite rare for the dreamer to be the one that does a bashing. It's usually you've been chased or attacked. So that was his idea, just based on the sort of phenomenology or the description of dreams. I mean, he's a philosopher. He's not a scientist, well, a proper scientist. And even though you don't remember the dream, you have this explicit memory. So you rehearsed it in your brain, so next time you might be better at doing it. So I thought it was a really interesting idea, actually, because it does go back to the evolution of REM sleep. Why did we evolve to have it as in caveman days? So this is my personal theory of why we have dream sleep. Now, I'll keep it simple. You need to be aware of a key concept in neurodevelopment. Okay, so when you're a baby, a newborn, lots of things go on. Your brain is developing rapidly, and one of the key things is so-called neuronal pruning. And you may think as we develop, as our brain becomes maturer, we get more nerve cells and more things happen, it builds up, gets bigger. In fact, it's actually the opposite. We are born with at least twice, probably 3 times as many nerve cells in our brains as we have when we're 20. So development is all about pruning, about selection. So you lose the stuff you're not using. It's selectivity of connections, and bits of brain that you don't use simply die. They wither away on the vine. Use it or lose it is the simple notion. So in early baby life, most babies have a pretty protected existence, obviously. They're not exposed to threats, hopefully. And this system, the limbic level I mentioned, that we know it lights up in dream sleep, shouldn't really be active if you're a happy baby, unless you're having dream sleep. Okay? And we know that babies have loads of dream sleep. A third of their life is spent in this bizarre state. So my simple theory is, well, put simply, is that REM sleep is a form of play or exercise for the limbic lobe, the emotional part of the brain. It's influenced by what's going on in the day, but it prevents this part of the brain from kind of withering on the vine. So it's a kind of a bit of aerobic exercise for the limbic lobe. And if you don't use it in the day, you use it at night instead. And that's probably why animals, maybe domestic animals, have loads of REM sleep, because they're not using it in their daily activities, but they're not being exposed to threats from the outside world. So that's my theory of REM sleep. Can't prove it, but it's my theory. Okay, the last part of the talk, the last 10 minutes, I just want to delve into when things go wrong. So this will be close to the heart of the meeting, I'm sure. So lots of things can go wrong with REM sleep. You can have the imagery of REM sleep when you're not properly asleep, and this is actually was drawn. I'm very impressed by the way by your pictures over there, but this was a picture from a narcoleptic patient from France, I think. It's a poodle, a rather scary poodle, I think, with a dagger in its head. This was coming out of a wardrobe. That's her frightening vision. So that's one element of it. The other element is having the paralysis kicking in when it shouldn't do. This is pictured by Fusini, the nightmare. With a horse and a demon sitting on the chest here. Actually, aside, does anyone know where the word nightmare comes from? I kind of thought it was horses, and it's actually not. The word mare is an ancient English word for demon. Right? So it's a night demon, night demon horses. And the other side of the coin is this: people who have active dreams, who haven't got the paralysis here, who are actually acting out their dreams and getting into trouble because of it. And I mentioned all these. So that thing I mentioned at the start of the talk, where this is what should happen, often doesn't happen, okay, in the world of parasomnias. So people get stuck in these halfway states. So bits of REM sleep can persist into wakefulness, or you can be stuck somewhere between wakefulness and REM sleep, or between wake and sleep, automatic behaviours, microsleeps, and the rest of it. So what about REM sleep, parasomnias? Well, nightmares. Well, again, to find nightmares is quite difficult, bad dreams. So officially called the books, disturbing mental experiences generally occur from REM sleep and resulting in awakenings. And these are quite common phenomena. And people that study these things draw attention to the fact that you have a recurring dream, the same kind of dream, or same exactly, or a repetitive dream where it's just the same theme that's kind of distressing you. And as I mentioned before, it's a key element of PTSD. If you're having these vivid dreams 4 weeks after the event, that's one of the cardinal diagnostic criteria of PTSD. Drugs are important in nightmares, actually. People come to me occasionally with nightmares, sort them out, please, and one of the first things I do is take a drug history, because beta blockers, very commonly used drugs for all kinds of things, and drugs for Parkinson's disease, dopamine drugs, are very good at making you have nightmares. So you'd stop this if you could. I mentioned before that antidepressants suppress dreams, or suppress REM sleep, but some of them also change the nature of REM sleep. So some people report bizarre dreams after the antidepressants, and others just make you have bad dreams. So it's hard to predict that, but again, it's a drug-related phenomenon. Not quite the DTs, but if you had a good night out, or you're on Valium and you stop it, you can get rebound dreams quite frequently, and that can be an issue. So how do you treat nightmares? Well, we try and avoid drugs with straightforward nightmares, but they would work if need be. So it's usually a behavioural or psychological approach to nightmares. You rehearse the dream in wakefulness, and you rehearse pleasant endings as apparently the best way of dealing with nightmares that are recurrent or repetitive. I'll just show you this case intrigued me actually. He's a very nice chap, brigadier in the army, very straightforward sort of guy, recently retired, sort of quite a few years ago now. And he was a extremely fit guy, no history of any problems at all, physically, mentally, or in sleep, until 2003. Some of you of my vintage in the audience remember the army went into Sierra Leone in 2003 and still had some trouble, effectively for once. And he was given this rather controversial drug, Lariam, for malaria when he was out there. And from that day, literally, fast forwarding 7 years when I saw him, every night he had like 4, 5, 6 vivid dreams. Not really nightmares, they didn't disturb him, because they were just bizarre, and he'd never had dreams before that. And he just wanted it sorted out, or at least he wanted an explanation for it. And he was perfectly well, he wasn't suing the army, he had no PTSD, didn't have a particularly traumatic time out there. And so he did some tests, and this is his hypnogram. You remember when I showed you at the start of the normal one? This is not normal. He's got loads of awakenings. This is a bit like narcolepsy, actually. Loads of awakenings through the night, but more importantly, his REM sleep, the red bars here, he's waking up in every single REM sleep period. So he's having dreams here. Quite shortly his awakenings, so they're not presumably arousing him greatly, but he's waking up in a dream. So we've shown him to have finding sleep, and we've confirmed his story. Haven't found an explanation for it. His brain scan was normal, and he didn't want any pills for this. But somehow this drug Lariam has converted this guy into a very fragile state in his REM sleep, a bit like narcolepsy. So I thought he was an interesting chap. Moving from nightmares to this, sleep paralysis. So this is voluntary muscle paralysis, your arms and legs essentially, when you're going to sleep or coming out of sleep. And normally it's coming out of sleep, and probably 1 in 5 people without any kind of other disorder will have this every now and then. You ask other people and you see hands go up. And because it's so scary, people remember it, so it's always remembered. Last seconds, occasionally minutes, and you have full recall what we're trying to disturb them. You can't take a deep breath in, you feel that your chest is tight, occasionally you have a vision on your chest as well, sitting down, you can't take a deep breath. And normally if you get shoved or nudged, you come out of it quite quickly. This picture I showed you, the parts get stronger, but you showed a picture of a woman presumably in sleep paralysis with a demon on her chest. But there is a form of this where it's a disorder. It's thought to run in families, and people will have maybe 2, 3 a week, say several a month. But otherwise they're completely normal. And occasionally we do treat this and would use antidepressants in their REM sleep suppressing capacity to suppress sleep paralysis when it's isolated. This is a slightly more interesting phenomenon, so-called RBD, REM sleep behaviour disorder. So this is a condition where you don't have paralysis in your dream sleep, so you simply act out dreams. They have to be violent dreams for it to be a disorder. This has only been described in '86 by these two guys here from Minneapolis, even though it's clearly been a phenomenon ever since man had REM sleep. But the interesting thing about RBD is that it usually affects middle-aged men, and it's a very, very good marker for developing Parkinson's disease 5, 10 years down the line. So there's lots of excitement about RBD when it affects middle-aged men like this, with lashing out and shouting and vocalising. But it's only been around, 30, 40 years in the textbooks. Animals have it. Again, rather slightly distasteful experiments on cats. So you make holes in a cat brain here, you will create a cat that does RBD. I'll to show you this cat acting out its dream. So this cat is in REM sleep. It's not still, it should be. That works, yeah. So this cat is, the video's slow for some reason, but just to make the point, this cat is awake, but it's not in REM sleep. Dogs, and so a YouTube special, dogs do this with knobs on. That's not coming up. So this dog is a YouTube video of a dog, presumably in REM sleep, presumably having a dream. You can see that here, it might seem too bright. Is that coming out at all? Can you not see that? No. So I'll take my word for it, this dog is running in his sleep. Anyway. Now this is human RBD, so this is a middle-aged guy who had it at the blue, who did develop Parkinson's disease 2 years later. So his eyes are shut, and he's in dream sleep, and he's basically acting out his dreams, punching and vocalising. In fact, the vocalisation was the worst bit of it. Okay, it hasn't come out a bit jerky, but he's Scottish, and you can maybe tell by the accent, but in his wakeful existence, you can't tell he's Scottish. He's got a very Anglified accent, but in his dreams he goes back to his Scottish accent quite interesting. And he swears, you might hear it at the end. Oh, you didn't hear it. Anyway, he swears, but Anglo-Saxon at the end. And that's what disturbs him most. Not so much the punching that upsets him, in fact he's swearing in his sleep. And so he went on to get Parkinson's disease 2 years later. So, what about narcolepsy? Dreams relative to narcolepsy. So this is what should happen in a normal person without narcolepsy. So this 24-hour hypnogram, so as seen before, this nice regulated sleep architecture, slow wave sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep through the night, 4 or 5 periods. And this is narcolepsy. So one slide, if you had that one slide that would summarise narcolepsy, it would be this. So this is 24/7 sleep-wake chaos. Okay, so basically sleep all over the shop. So nighttime sleep completely random, no real pattern to it at all. Little bits of REM sleep here and there. Soon after you go to sleep, and then in the day lots of sleepiness with REM sleep intrusion. So you shouldn't be getting REM sleep in your daytime naps. So it's 24/7 sleep-wake chaos, and that slide just demonstrates it, I think. But particularly with REM sleep, so REM sleep is particularly bad in narcolepsy, as many of you will attest to. Most people have bizarre dreams. Sleep paralysis is that's 1 in 4 people with narcolepsy. But unlike the normal form, as it were, it affects people as they're going into sleep. So they go into REM sleep quite quickly, and it's more often when they go into sleep rather than out of sleep that's a problem. Often dreams are very vivid, and often people don't know whether they're real or not real. And as I mentioned before, people with narcolepsy tend to have a great memory of their dreams. It stays with them because they're so vivid. And this idea that they have supernatural powers, I've come across people in clinic, they're convinced they have special powers. They can predict the future, they can predict when at 4:30 at Clapton, which is quite interesting, almost a bit delusional sometimes. And they occur during naps, so they shouldn't happen. If you have naps because you've got sleep apnea or because you're overdoing it, you shouldn't have dreams in daytime naps, but people with narcolepsy certainly do. And this is an RBD I mentioned before with the chap there who's middle-aged and got Parkinson's disease. A form of RBD is very common. Probably 1 in 4 people with narcolepsy will have a form of RBD. It's a very benign form though. It's not the thrashing up form, punching and swearing. It's more of a gentle form. And this is a patient of mine who's having a multiple sleep latency test, and she's now in REM sleep, okay? And it's quite subtle. She's not moving much, but in a minute you'll see her. I think it works. She just gesticulates slightly, have a little bit of a conversation, which shouldn't happen. She should be paralysed. So she's got mild, benign RBD. Do you see her move in a minute? It's not playing particularly well. There we go. So anyway, at that point she was woken up, and we asked her, what were you dreaming about? And it wasn't being chased by tigers or whatever. She was buying a pair of shoes and was having a discussion about the price. So what is that telling us? I'm not sure what that's telling us about the RBD in narcolepsy, or this is about the female brain, to be honest, but this isn't the RBD that you get in people that have Parkinson's disease, but it is there. Okay. But bottom line, any REM sleep parasomnia, any disorder of REM sleep can occur in narcolepsy, and occasionally all of them do at the same time. And lastly, cataplexy. I'm not going to dwell much on cataplexy in this talk, but cataplexy is REM sleep paralysis that kicks in when it shouldn't do, usually with emotion or with anticipating emotion. I just showed a video of a patient, just on my books actually, and she hasn't got narcolepsy, sort of. She's not sleepy. She has no problem with her sleepiness. We've measured her chemical, her hypocretin chemical that's lacking in narcolepsy in her spinal fluid. She hasn't got any. So she should have narcolepsy, but she doesn't, because she's not sleepy. And you can't really have narcolepsy without being sleepy. But she has cataplexy. So she's got very rare isolated cataplexy. This is her, she's in Sunderland, and this is how you can sit there. She's talking about the dogs, and then she has an attack. This is typical cataplexy. It's not playing very well. Sorry, it's not playing very well. Anyway, she falls down with classical cataplexy. So I'll leave you with this rather mind-blowing slide. Look at this long enough, you actually go quite mad. So I quite like this quote: "A madness is a long dream, and a dream is a short madness." Thank you for attention. Thank you.